Wum bum ba bum 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 bum. Let me edit this because it's no longer making the Thunder Drake. Yet another tabletop mini. Yet another tabletop mini. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube or otherwise recorded version, I am just simply getting everything ready for. Let's go ahead and. And switch to this. Whee! Okay. Hi. That's Shinji, of course. But yeah, today I'm just going to go ahead and just. I'm not going to make any new parts per se, but I'm probably going to go ahead and just make a new figure of some kind. Exactly what? I don't know. What I could do is I could see if there's a generator online and randomly roll up race class combo. So it's always one possibility. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and Google. You can't see me right now because I'm doing this. Random race and class generator. Okay. Let's see what we got here. No, I don't want that. Why did I suddenly... No. There we go. Let's see what this says. 5e random character generator. Okay. Beep, beep, beep. And the connection was reset, so that was dead. Try again. And nope, that's dead. I keep coming up with these dead ones. Nah. Okay, that's not online. That's a list of charts. Online 5e. And nope, no generator. Come on. 5e random generator. Of course it'd be on Dungeon. That's an encounter. I don't want an encounter, I want a character generator. General, no. Fantasy. NPCs. Nope. And nope, this one's got... Yeah, no. And the Orc Pub, that's not a random one. Meh. Okay, and hello Chris, how's it going? For those who don't know, Chris is one of my co-workers. I've known her for a very long time, and she's awesome. I guess what I could do is just go ahead and just go into Daz Studio and just start playing around. Now, I use Daz Studio for this because of the rigging. I know the rigging better. I do not use the default Daz Studio figure, as those of you who have used it can see. This is a custom original geometry figure that I created specifically for sculpting on for miniatures. That's why it's got simplified nose and ears and very basic structure. And one other thing I did was I added what most programs call blend shapes, but Daz Studio calls morphs, for all sorts of different races, like Dragonborn, Dwarf, the Dry Undead, Gnome, Hobgoblin, Orc, Orc Boss, Big Orc, Reptiles, Ogre. Oh, let's zoom out to see the Ogre a little bit better. That's an Ogre. And then there's a Troll. And on top of that, I also have some modifiers. One, for a much smaller epic scale purposes, and a little bit larger for that. And next, just makes it more muscular for like the barbarian types. But yeah, this is just your basic. The female doesn't have as many add-on bits or morphs like that, but it's got some decent ones. But the thing is, what are we going to do with this? Someone has just linked me a quick character generator. Let's check this out. Okay, we're going to change this to 10th level first of all, or level 5 through 10. We're going to make it male just because it's a lot easier. And we're going to click Generate Character. Bing! A Halfling Warlock with a quarterstaff and daggers and a light crossbow. Okay, so a Halfling Warlock. What do y'all think? Think I should go ahead and go with that, or roll it again? We're going to keep rolling until we get something that everybody likes. And why is that studio on services? Let's put it on scene. So a Halfling Warlock with a quarterstaff, and he's an Archfey patron, which means he follows the Fey folk, the pixies, the She, that sort of thing. He's got he's also a former soldier. That's always interesting. So tell me, do y'all want to see me make a Halfling Warlock, or do you want to see me make something different? If it's something different, we'll just re-roll. Okay. Oh, if I don't hear anything in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and re-roll. Well, next 15 seconds, we're going to go ahead and re-roll. Roll with it. Okay. All right. Did you mean do the halfling or roll again? Because that kind of confused me, Chris. Roll again. Okay. Generate character. Alright, what we have now is a Dragonborn Sorcerer. Former soldier, carrying daggers, no staff. And he's got a Dungeoneer's pack, so he's got a pretty hefty backpack. And an amulet of some kind, apparently. And he's got Okay, he's got mostly flame-type spells. So, a Dragonborn Sorcerer. Like I said, I do have Dragonborn as one of the races. And I've got a various set of horns we could load in on him. Then again, I do also have... What happens if you combine a Halfling and a Dragonborn? There's a Halfling Dragonborn for you. Isn't that funny? And then we make them super muscular. Yeah, it's a bit much. Okay, Halfling. Let's go ahead and deal with and do the Dragonborn Sorcerer. Let's go Dragonborn. I'm going to make him less muscular than usual. So I'm going to have to change these parameter settings. Allow a negative 25%. A little bit thinner than the average Dragonborn. He's still pretty bulky. Now, go into the content library, and you may see right over here, just down here, I've got two sets of horns and a set of fins. So, for example, we could take him and load in those horns and these fins, or we could delete those fins and make them horns. And in fact, we could just go ahead and delete those and use those horns. There's all sorts of different little Dragonborn horns I could throw on here. I think I'll leave it like this. And then the next thing that we got to do is he has a dagger. He does not have a staff. This actually gives us a few more posing options. So I go to my props, and I scroll down. Well, first let me go ahead and expand from selected. I'm going to take these horns and parent them to his head. Now, I'm going to put his dagger in his left hand. And that dagger needs to have a morph applied that makes it wider because it makes it easier to print. Now you'll notice the hand automatically closed around the dagger. That's another great reason that I use Daz Studio for making the initial poses for these things. And now the next thing we have to do is he's a spellcaster. So we got to decide, do we want Arcane Bolt, a Fire Bolt, or Lightning Bolt in his right hand? You know, because he's going to be casting a spell of some kind. Zark. So the Lightning Bolt is one, but that's usually one for more, for the more, how to put it? It's less common than fire or just random. No, I make the morph targets in Zbrush, actually. I actually have a couple. If you go onto the YouTube channel, which I've got, I should have Nightbot set up. It'll be sending the link here in just a few minutes. You should be in there. Yes, Daz does have Go Z. I don't use it. That's a personal preference, but it does have Go Z. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it, I'm just going to give it the Arcane Bolt. Now you'll notice that the Arcane Bolt is coming out of the palm like he's zarking. It's attached to the hand. Now the next thing we do is we got to figure out, one other thing. This character is listed as wearing, well, he's bronze. Equipment, common clothes, Dungeoneer's pack. So we need to give him, we're going to give him a piece of clothing that is a robe skirt. The reason for this is that when we bring it into sculpt on, it blends in. It'll blend in with the upper torso. We can make it into an actual robe. The other thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and give him a backpack, because he's listed as having an adventurer's pack. So we're going to go a dungeoneer's pack. We're going to give him a nice heavy backpack. Now, he's also listed as having multiple daggers. We're not going to worry about that. We could load in a belt dagger. Where did I put that belt? Oh yeah, I know where it is. Anyway, but this is the basic before we go in and sculpt. Anything else that's going on him will be sculpted on. He doesn't need a helmet. He doesn't need pauldrons. He doesn't need any kind of guns or beam sword. And we've already got the magic, so it's now down to, well, just a basic pose would be a stand, but we don't need that. What we need to do is we need to figure out what pose we want him taking. I'm going to hide the bottom of the robe for this. Now, he could be holding the dagger back and leaning away. He could be far more ferocious about it. In fact, as a Dragonborn, he's more likely to be ferocious. So he's going to have his right foot forward and his left foot back. We're going to select the hip. We're going to bend it forward. What that means is it's tilted forward. Now, one thing, for a nice dynamic pose, the line of the hips and the line of the shoulders should never be parallel. Not in this direction, not in this direction, and not in this direction. The reason being, because unless you're in the military standing at attention, yours never will be. Even if you look at mannequins in the store nowadays, they have that angle between the shoulders and the hips, and between both of them and the ground. By giving it a bit of dynamic let's see. We need to cock the hips back a bit so they'll be leaning in the opposite direction. A bit too far. There. Now we're gonna, just for the sake of getting this out of the way, let's go ahead and bend the hand back. Now we're going to bend the leg forward, this leg forward, and the foot down. We're going to go to the left view, frame. Okay, we want it slightly further forward. And we're going to bend it back just a little bit more, bend the feet up. Now, I know that Chris is probably looking at this pose and cringing because some of the results of this bend are pretty messy. But again, that's because we're going to be sculpting on this. This is not the final view. Now let's kind of try to make this a bit more flat to the ground. Oh, wrong direction. Yeah. And now we got to do that. Now we got to bring the other leg back. Actually, all we really need to do is bend that knee and twist the leg this way. Side to side in. Now again, it looks like there's some serious issues. Let me go ahead and drop this down a bit because it needs to be on the ground, or as close to it as I can get. Nah, negative 1.75. That's close enough for right now. And then we need to twist the foot just a little, bend it, and then bend the toe. Alright. One of the things I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that it's as close to even with the actual other foot as possible. Since right now, if I hit Control D to drop it to the ground, because of that firebolt, it lifts the whole thing. So just to get it out of the way, I'm going to bring this forward. Now, yeah, that gets me down to the ground. Barely. Or not. Close enough. Now that's the hip and legs. Now we have the torso and the abdomen, and initially I'm going to deal with them both the same way. A bend forward, a twist, and the chest is going to have a side to side to the left. Move this back to where it should be. So that he's kind of almost lunging forward. Now let's twist the neck. But it's going to side to side the other way. There. Now the problem is, we now have a problem that his horn is poking through his backpack. So we can just go ahead and bend it forward a little bit more on the neck. Twist it a little bit more on the head. And side to side a little bit more. Let's take that neck and twist it a bit more. And let's bend the head up a little again. Now, this is the collar point. The collar is not this. The collar is actually this motion. It's something that a lot of anime and that tend to ignore. And we're going to have to bend it up a little bit. And then we're going to bend the actual arm up a little bit. Now, we're going to twist it just a bit. And we're going to twist this just a bit. Now we're going to move the fingers, because as they are right now, the fingers are not quite in the right shape for tossing out this bolt of arcanabula. Yes, I did just make that up. And we're going to bend it around. Yeah. Now, you'll notice that it's pointing down. That's not good. However, I put the center where it would need to be for adjusting this. So, we're going to adjust the Z rotate and the Y rotate. Oh, not the Y, the X. Until it's in a nice straight off, tossing out that bolt of arcane hell. And it's still too. Let's go ahead and bend the hand forward again. And we're going to rotate it even more. And there we have it. The arcane energy. Whee! Tossing out the bolt. For the most part, this could be done as is. But there's a couple things wrong. First of all, let me go ahead and show you what the problem is. Right, the problem with that's not a problem. Problem is, this is still it's the collar is still not quite where it needs to be. We also need to give it a bit of a twist here and a bit of a bend at the elbow. Alrighty, and let's make the robe visible. And this is the core geometry that we will be sculpting on. This is the pose. Now you'll notice that didn't even take half an hour. Now, like I said, while I've been doing that, I've been kind of ignoring chat, and as you can see, Nightbot has gone ahead and passed out the information that you need. I'm going to get a soda. What I'm going to do here is I am going to hide the various extra bits and pieces. The horns, the Arcane Bolt, the dagger, the backpack, and the robe. Well, yeah, and the robe. And I'm going to export this. Now, because of the way the screen capture works, you can't see me exporting this anywhere. It's kind of meh, but oh well. We're going to call it a DK Sorc body. Accept. And then the horns and the robe bottom, and not this, are going to be exported as DK Sorc parts. And then we're going to make the horns invisible and the robe invisible, but the backpack, dagger, and Arcane Bolt visible. And these we're going to export as props. DK Sorc props. Save. Okay. Now the thing is, except for when it comes time for me to go ahead and render a sample render of the final miniature, this is the last time I'm going to be in Dad's studio. In fact, next place I'm going is Zbrush. The great thing about Zbrush, one of the most wonderful things I'd ever experienced. Buy Zbrush once, and to date, all of the updates have been free. So now we're going to go ahead. We're right now in Zbrush, and I am loading in the extra parts. First of all, the body. And we have our sorcerer body. Now I have to append a subtool, and on that I'm going to import the parts. And then we're going to append another subtool, and here I'm going to import the props. Now one of the first things I'm going to do is going to require my oh so wonderful and magnanimous Wacom Intuos. And with my Wacom Intuos comes my wonderful stylus and my stylish Green Lantern stylus holder. And yep. Now, in Zbrush, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have to smooth out where this is. Smooth it out a bit here. And then we're going to inflate it a bit, just for the sole purpose, make sure it does not have lazy mouse, just for the sole purpose of, we're going to give it some flow here in a minute. So we need to inflate it a little bit back here. And smooth it, just to smooth it. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do is move. We are going to move this. Oh. The reason for this move is because we need to make sure that it's nice and even. Now the next move is going to be in front of the toes. We're going to lift up the robe over the toes. Just a little. As the toes are poking through the edge of the robe. There. Now the next thing we're going to do, once again, before we really get into it, we're going to give the head a little. We're going to shrink this down, and we're going to give little sockets for these horns on the head. Again, we're going to use inflate for this. I'm going to inflate over top of the horn here, then on top of this horn, and on top of the chin horn. Now we're going to go behind, and we're going to give it a little bit of swelling behind. And the same thing on this side, just to... And then we're going to add in the sockets on the back of the head. And thus we have our horns actually looking like they're part of the head of this guy. We're going to frame it to zoom it out, and we are going to merge down. Actually, no. On the parts, we need to go ahead and give it a layer of subdivision because the parts are a little bit less polygon heavy. I mean, if we look, see, so we're going to subdivide it, delete lower. Okay, now we go back to the subtool, we go up to the body, and we're going to merge down. I'm going to say always okay because it's going to be. And then go back to geometry, and we're going to subdivide until we get to be about 2 to 3 million polygons. 3.069, that's good enough for me. Frame, zoom. Now we use Dynamesh. Dynamesh is going to blend both of these figures as well as the eye and the closed mouth into solid geometry. And what that will help us do is it will make it easier on print jobs, number one. Number two, it will also give us even polygon flow. All of the polygons, if I hit line fill polygon, if you look down here, you can easily see these polygons are much, much wider than they are long. So we need to correct that, and so we set blur to 0. Resolution, let's go ahead and 768, because if we do too much lower, we're going to lose all of the detail in the head that we already have. Dynamesh, and I'm about to slow down. And oh look, it's now 816 polygons, or 816,000, or vertexes. And we zoom in, and we can see that there's actually a bridge of polygons here. So what we're going to do, we're going to shrink that just a little bit more, and we're going to smooth out where this hits the belly, the body area. Actually, let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Now, by doing this, what we're doing is we're making it into one single solid piece between the body and that little dress-like area, so that we can turn it into robes. And a bit of a blend here. Let's frame. There. this still needs a little bit more smoothing. We also need to kind of smooth out the wrinkles and musculature, especially right here, where it's all nice and tight. Because almost never are robes super tight around the upper torso, especially for a mage. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make the backpack and all that invisible for the purposes of doing what we're doing. Okay. Now the next step that we got to do is we have to make the sleeves. So easiest way to do this is I'm going to select most of the arm. And then around. Okay. I'm going to come back in and clean up this end of the sleeve here. Then we come over here and we're going to do the same thing here, but we're going to bring it a little bit closer to the bring it a little bit further away from the wrist. The reason for this is because it'll hang a bit better. And again, we're going to clean it up as soon as we finish doing the basics on it. We're going to shrink the mouse. Control-Alt will let us erase this extra. Or in this case, add on a little more to kind of even off the... Let's frame out again. I hate it when I get them sideways like that, so it's there. Now, we're going to zoom back in, and with a smaller mouse, we're going to kind of bring this in a bit more. So what's going to happen is we're going to make these into the sleeves of the robe. The way this works is by masking it off like this. There is an option to where you can extrude duplicate geometry to what you have selected, or extract as they call it. A 0.03 tends to be the optimal balance between large enough for a FDM printer to print, like regular, this is my CR10 made in Orc, and what you need a resin printer to really print well. It's not saying that you can't see it, but as an example, I have this nice little sci-fi guy right here. And I'm going to hold him up to the camera and zoom in on him. That's a bit too far, yeah. Zoom in on him. And then I'm going to grab a flashlight. Now, if you look at those thighs, you can see he has thigh plates. Right? And you can see the edges of those thigh plates and the belly plates. In person, it's not so easy to see them. Those were done with an extraction of 0.2. And at a 0.2, well, yeah. So, what we're going to do here is we're going to extract. Now that looks a lot thicker than it needs to be, but trust me, it actually prints well. Plus, we're going to be going for more of a longer sleeve, and we need a bit more geometry to play with here. Now, the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to take this back over to, now that we've got the sleeve selected, we're going to take it back to Dynamesh. But we're not going to do it as high of a resolution. That's good enough. Now, I'm going to make this really big. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move this to move topological. And we're going to bring this in to cover up most of the musculature. Not all, but most. And this will also let us blend it in easier later. And at first, it just looks like, I'm just kind of dragging around. No pun intended for a Dragonborn, but and now that we've got it in place, let's bring it in. This is going to become the sleeve. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to make it even bigger. Grab this top and bring it down. A little bit higher. And I'm going to grab the end down here. I'm going to pull it down. Because this is going to be a sorcerer's robes. In fact, let's go ahead and make it even bigger and drag it off to one side a little bit. And there we go. Now we're going to shrink the mouse because I got to kind of bring this back up inside the wrist. So that when we actually blend this all together, the smooth that just a little bit. When we blend it all together, the sleeve will be hanging. By the same token, I need to come over here and do something similar with this sleeve. Some things like what I'm doing right now with the moving of the geometry, it doesn't matter if you're doing it with a mouse or a tablet. Other things, you almost always want to be using a tablet, just because you have more control and more precision about where things end up being. Okay, let's bring this in. The thing is, a Dragonborn in D&D 5th edition actually makes a pretty good sorcerer because they've got good charisma scores. They got a charisma bonus. Not a lot of races do. Halfling, half-elf can choose to have a charisma bonus. Variant human can choose to have a charisma bonus. And I think, crazy enough, tieflings have a charisma bonus. Okay, but yeah, Dragonborn have a charisma bonus. They're naturally charismatic. Not so much because they're charming, but because they have a very strong sense of self and a strong personality because they're related to dragons. In the current edition. Originally, Dragonborn were not related to dragons, but were instead a form of priestly benefit for being a priest of Bahamut. Yes, the original Dragonborn were not a race. They were priests of Bahamut. Okay, now I need to go ahead and let's bring the bottom edge of this sleeve up because it's starting to hang a bit too low. Does your sleeve hang low? Can you wave it to and fro? Can you throw it over your shoulder like a continental soldier? Yes, I'm goofy. I'm a goofy. Better than being what good old oh god Chris, you can help me with this. Played Edgar Friendly in Demolition Man. Dennis Leary. There we go. Never mind. Yeah, it's better to be a crazy guy than to be an asshole like Dennis Leary. Yeah. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give him a kind of a low collar. Actually, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this a couple times because I just noticed I need to give it a little bit of detailing before we do anything else. And that detailing is I need to go in here into this inside elbow. And using the slash with a low intensity and a low size, I need to give it at least a rather sharp bend. I can come back in and do the wrinkles later. So that's too strong. So let's reduce the intensity, reduce the size. Okay. And we're going to do the opposite just to kind of bring out this edge. And then hit a 1 and it does it again, and there we go. Now, I'm going back to the body, and with a slightly smaller mouse, let's go ahead and put it on standard just in case I'm going to draw on his collar area. And from here, let's zoom around, and where's the edge? Here's the edge on this side. This will probably end up being covered up by the backpack, but I don't care. If it's there, and even if it's just a tiny ledge, it will be subconsciously noticeable that it does continue. So, we then blend this in, and we come forward. Now we're going to go to geometry, and we're going back to subtool, that's right, and we're going to extract. We're going to extract it. Accept, turn off the selection, and on the regular, turn off the selection, and now we have the collar. The collar we're going to Dynamesh. And what's going to happen with this, we're going to go ahead, go to move, and we're going to start dragging it down. Dragging it into the torso. And try to make it as even of a drag as possible. And there we go. Now, I don't use a lot of what Zbrush can do when I'm doing this. There's so much more, so many different ways I could do this. But I just choose to do it this way because this is what I'm most familiar with, and I get the results I need. Being that this is for tabletop miniatures, I don't need a huge amount of detail in any of this. And so the end result is, it looks kind of blobby on the actual sculpt, but it still looks right when it gets printed. Again, most printers can't do the level of detail needed to even begin to see any of the obvious flaws in the sculpt. All we're doing is we're preparing for print. We're not preparing for a full magazine spread on the figure. Or if we are, it's as a miniature, not as a full close-up rendering of a realistic Dragonborn. I may have not mentioned it tonight. A lot of you will notice that the proportions are off compared to a normal human of this thing. And that's not because he's a Dragonborn, but because he's a miniature. Miniatures need larger hands and heads than real people, because when you're just barely over an inch tall, your head and your hands and your feet are a lot smaller and a lot harder to see than if you were 6 foot tall. This means it's also harder to paint in the when it comes time to paint. Now let's go ahead and divide it twice. And we still have our basic robe. We now have our basic robe. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to combine the robe and the sleeves. We're going to zoom in very close and compare the polygons. And we see that they're almost twice the size on this, which means we need to go ahead and give it one more subdivision. And now we go to subtool. Go back to this, merge down. It's now one subtool that the polygons are about the same size, but it's still 4 chunks. So we're going to go ahead and go in here. We're going to touch up some areas of the mouth just to make it blend better. Now, let's make it a little bit bigger, a little bit higher intensity. I'm going to follow the bottom edge here. And what we're going to do is we're going to seal the mouth, because as you can see right now, it's only partially sealed. We're going to seal the mouth. After we get done doing what we're about to do, we're going to go back in and refine the division of the mouth. And so now we're going to geometry and we're going to Dynamesh once more at a 768 resolution. Bing! And as we did before, we're going to make the mouse bigger and we're going to blend in the areas right here. We're not going to blend the ends of it, just where the sleeves meet the collar and the body. And here. And the end result is that by adding these sleeves and this collar, we have managed to turn a topless Dragonborn with a long skirt into a Dragonborn wearing a robe. Frame. Here we have our robe. Now, we need to go ahead and we need to finish polishing this area. In fact, we're going to use polish. Gonna blend it in and smooth. And as we do this, it's going to make it a little bit easier for us to show this as being a robe. Okay, and we frame it out. And there we have our robe done. Blah. So are you enjoying yourself, Chris? Oh. We're going to do more than just have a robe on him, by the way. He's listed explicitly as having an amulet as part of his gear. We'll deal with that in a minute. And that's the end of... Oh, yeah. Like my little mug. Put this in the trash can. Get out a new soda pop. And so we know we have to give him an amulet, but it's probably also a good idea to give him a belt. Because if that robe is clinging that tightly to his waist, and he's got that tiny of a waist, how does he get that massive upper torso in there? Tell me how. He doesn't. It doesn't follow that tightly. He's got a belt. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to use the same techniques as before to make the belt, but this time we're going to make it something. We're not going to be blending it in. We're going to just go ahead and mask off the waist area. And there we go. However, it's not going to be just a belt. It's going to be... He's a pro wrestler wizard. Going to be a fancy, heavy, thick in the front belt. Like he's wearing a weightlifter belt backwards. And the reason I'm doing this is because it tends to look cool. It's a place to act as a focal point. And that is our belt area marked off. Subtool, extract, 0.3, bing, accept, draw, and draw. Those last two draws are to get rid of the masking that's on these items. And now Dynamesh. And what we're going to do is we're going to, first of all, we're going to polish the front side. That's not working. I don't know why. I know why, but anyway, we're going to move topological. We're going to move this up just a bit. We're going to hit smooth on this because it'll actually bring out that wrinkle. And now the last thing is we're going to subdivide just a couple times. We're going to leap lower. We're going up here to make sure this is on. We're going back to inflate. Because what we're going to do, we're going to add a little bit of trim around the top and bottom. And that we're going to turn the lazy mouse on. And we're going to start off on one side of this, and the other we're going to smooth out. We're going to... That's not enough. We need to increase it a lot because, among other things, and then we're gonna 1, 2. Let's go ahead and let's just leave it to the center. We'll have this. So we're gonna follow along here. Ah, we missed. I'm going to make sure we keep it on the geometry in the front. At the end there, I slipped onto the back geometry, which causes problems. What the heck just happened there? Nope. Why did it jump like that? And there we go. And then another 1, 2. Because what that'll do is that'll give us... No. Just the 1. Yeah, there we go. We want it to be distinct. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead, we're going to subdivide it. Because And not only do we want this smooth, although no, it'd be a better idea to wait until after we do a Dynamesh, because we're going to add, first of all, we're going to smooth out this area right here. We're going to grab our slash, it's on add, and we're going to add it up here, make it sharper up here. If we lower the subdivision, we need to then raise it again, because we need to make this a belt and not a rope. Now, delete lower. We're going to mask off the buckle area. Because the buckle's in the back. And then now I'm going to make sure that it's just barely over the edge here. And this will let us make a buckle that looks like it would actually hold this belt. Pardon me while I get quiet there. It's a matter of concentration, and I don't mean the game. Concentration. Concentration. Alright, there we go. That's good enough for now. And we go back up subtool, and we're going to extract that. Accept. Dynamesh. The reason we're dynameshing all these extra parts is so that they actually, you know, they've got detail to them, and we can work them. And because when we first extract them out, there's only a single polygon thick. That's not good. Smooth that. Okay, let's go ahead and divide it a couple times because it's getting too fast on the smoothing. And let's sharpen this edge. And then sharpen this edge. And then we're going to use move, but we're going to take the focal shift really small. And we're going to use that to sharpen the inside. Oh. I know what we'll do. That didn't seem to work as I wanted it to. We're going to try here. Once again, this is something that, on first glance, looks kind of sloppy. And if we were ever to get this close to the miniature, you could see it. But by the time we get done, the scale that we're working at, that's going to be less than a fraction of a millimeter off. Okay. Frame. There we go. Now, divide, delete lower. And we got ourselves our belt on now. However, we still need to go ahead. Let's merge the belt with the buckle. Zoom in. And what we're going to do now, I have created in the past a brush whose whole purpose is that it inserts various kinds of gemstones. And this is the perfect opportunity to use one of them. And that's too far in. So Control Z to undo. Actually, no. Control Y. Let's redo it. Let's go ahead and go back to that. Now, we're going to split the unmasked parts. So that way we can have the gem as different. Now we're going to use deform, and we're going to move the whole thing forward. We're going back to the move topological tool, but we're going to go to the regular move tool. And we're going to make this huge and a low focal shift. Because what we're going to do is we're going to pull the whole thing out a little bit. There we go. Now we're going to zoom in. We're going to lower the focal shift back to normal. We're going to bring the draw size down to about there. And we're going to drag the edges back down a little bit out. And what we have is we have a gemstone embedded in the center. Let's bring this out there. We need space. And we're going to add a couple more. Now these will be kind of bonuses for anyone who has a a resin printer, because once again these will be a little bit too small to be seen on an FDM printer. And one here. Now frame out, and we have our belt. Now what we're going to do is we're going to merge down, and then this and this alone, we're going to give it a layer of subdivision. Delete that lower subdivision. We're going to give it a blur 0, resolution of 512, and dynamesh it. The reason for this, we now have 33,000 polygons. That was not good. It came out really messy. So we're going to give it a blur 0 and 768 resolution, dynamesh. Good enough. I'm going to shrink this, and there we go. I'll smooth out some areas of this. There. Frame. Now, the next thing to do would be the trim of the robe. I can go ahead and hide this belt. And add trim on the bottom and top. Or I can just say forget it, because a lot of that would be paint. Or I can do it the old-fashioned way. I'll use slash, small brush, subtract, and make sure I have the lazy mouse on with about 43. I was thinking 40s, but I need to go ahead right here and smooth that. I noticed that bicep area going wonky earlier. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to draw a dig around, and that's not deep enough. So we need to increase that intensity about 40, about 50, yeah. No. 75. And looking at it, that's way too much. Yeah, I think what's happening is we were getting an optical illusion. And close that trim, bring it a little bit. And there we go. That's that wrist trim. We're going to do something similar along this side. And come this down here. And I just had a Shinji decides he wanted to go eat, so he just jumped right past my head. Bring that down and connect these down here. Not going to be seen as well. However, I do have a bit to clean up right here. Okay, and a little bit of frame, and it's clear. You can see that line. Okay, once again, getting a bit of sody. It occurs to me that before we do the neck trim, we really should bring out his amulet. So what we're going to do, we're going to do it the same way we always have, Pinky. We're going to draw a let's bring this. Let's smooth that real quick. Now, that we're going to go ahead and extract. What we're doing with that is that's the string for the amulet. Now, once again, we go to geometry and dynamize it. We're then going to just simply get a very large mouse frame, and we're going to smooth it. Make it a good bit thinner, because what's going to happen is we're not going to use and then the next thing we're going to do once we've got this kind of trimmed out just a little bit is we're going to then deformation inflate it. It'll be more like a cord at this point. Now we're going to go back to the subtool, or we're going to go ahead and divide that one because it needs a little bit of subdivision for when it comes time. Delete lower. Go back to the body subtool, and we're going to give it yet another gemstone. This gemstone is going to be his. Let's go ahead and deformation. I'm going to rotate along the x-axis. No, we're not. Rotate along the z-axis. And then offset along the z-axis. And no, it needs to be on the x-axis. Now offset on the z. And I'm going to make this mouse a lot bigger. I'm going to shrink it on the X. Just make it a little bit narrow. And now that I've got this larger mouse, go to remove, reduce the focal shift. We're going to bring it into the chest. And we're going to shrink the mouse a bit and bring this side out just a little. What? Nope. Reduce the focal shift to 0. There. There we go. And there is our medallion that we know he had. So we turn on that. And that's what it looks like so far. Let's go back to Mr. No, it's split off the medallion itself. And now let's hide. Well, let's hide the amulet and the belt. And now let's go back to doing what we were doing before and draw on the inner trim for this. 24, that's about where it was. And slash. And now. Move this down, and sorry I got quiet again. And let's draw this trim line around the neck. Bring it around. And we have a small area right here we need to be very careful with. Okay, and now we can bring the amulet visible again. Let's bring this in just a bit. Connect that there. Frame. I'm going to make that visible. Then we add, let's see how everything else looks. Okay, we need to make these props higher geometry, higher poly count. Divide it a couple times. And that's one too many. And the final look is here for the basic shape. We got all the details we need, except wrinkles. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select on that. I'm going to merge everything down except our base figure, so I can hide them all at once and show them all at once. What we need to do now is we need to give wrinkles to this robe, because as it is, he may as well be wearing a down vest for all that we can tell what it is. Now there's different kinds of folds that we can add to the cloth. There's folds that come about because there's a bend in a joint. Those folds have a tendency to radiate from that bend, as you can see right here. There's folds that come about from being compressed together, which is what happens around a belt. And then there's folds that come from just simply hanging and its own weight causing a droop. Those are the three. In fact, all three of those kinds of folds can be found on this figure. Meanwhile, I have a visitor. Hey, baby girl. Let go. Let go, baby girl. This is Shinju. She's 12. She's a sweetie. She sleeps right here. Hey. Come here. Yeah, it's snuggles. Good girl. See? I love my baby girl. Which gizmo? Remember? I'm just playing this by ear. And I may have just missed your comment because I had to refresh the page. But yeah, like I was saying, there's all three kinds of wrinkles to be found on Mr. Dragonborn Sorcerer here. On the sleeves here, we've got the droops. At the elbows, we have the wrinkles, and at the waist, we have the compression. In fact, it's the waist is where I'm going to start. Now, the way I do these would probably make the typical ZBrusher wince and say, "What the heck are you doing?" That's because I'm not doing it to look photoreal. I'm doing it to give the impression that they're there. Oh, the gizmo. Because I was moving a masked off area, and I don't know how to get the gizmo to work for just a masked off area instead of the entire thing. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make it visible just for right now so I can double check on where these compression wrinkles will come from. So that we come from up here. And again, this will be to wrinkles what comic books are to anatomy. Just enough to get the impression along. And now we got to do the ones on the bottom, so. Now let's hide that again. And we have where our basics are. Now I kind of, first I make the ends of each one of these a little bit longer and smooth it out because they fade. Another thing is wrinkles aren't a smooth curve usually. They're a sharp bend. I start off with what looks like a curve, but by the time I'm done, it's going to be a lot sharper. This will also help when it's time for painting. When you hit it with a dry brush, having sharp edges will make it easier to catch the paint. Or if you use a wash, it'll make it easier for that top part to sink, for the paint to sink past it. Yeah, right now I'm just kind of gently extending it and then smoothing out the extension to make it end. Oh. Now here. And I can hear my mother in the living room watching true crime TV. Okay, that's the ones above. Now I'm going to do something similar to the ones below, or that's the ones below. And there we go. There we go. Now, that's just the basic, that's the exterior swelling of those wrinkles. The next step is to go and actually dig in and out on these wrinkles and make the mouth smaller. And it's going to start off there, digging in the center of each of these wrinkles. There. As they're looking more and more like actual wrinkles that would be found in clothing. Because that's what compression wrinkles do, is they kind of fold in on themselves a bit. There's that. Let's make sure I get these again. I zoom out. And then I dig in here, and here, and here, and smooth it. Trying to smooth out the entirety of these down here. And then here. These are not the only wrinkles that are going to be in the leg area, just to let you know. We're going to have some swoopy, drapey ones too, to show the lines of tension. These are only showing the lines of tension at the waist. Okay. Okay. Just a couple more slashes. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go... Oh, no, there's still one more. Now we're going to go ahead, we're going to add a lot smaller, but we're going to only add on one side of each, on the sides. This is going to help sharpen those wrinkles. Okay, that's still not enough. There we go. And it's going to help us make them a bit sharper again for the sake of catching the paintbrush. And smooth. There we go. That helps fix that out there, that area out. We're gonna give it a tweak here and here. So I'll just blend these in. Not every wrinkle will get one of these. Just what feels right for movement. And it may not even get it on both sides. Because remember, wrinkles on clothing are random. They're not consistent until they get old enough that they begin to wear in those wrinkles. And they're not predictable, again, until they get old enough that you've begun to wear in those wrinkles. Okay. And smooth these out. And that's pretty much it for the compression wrinkles. Now we have to add in the wrinkles across the front and back of the robe for the tension between the legs. We're going to switch to the standard brush. We're going to make it bigger. I'm going to poke my head into chat and see if you said anything. Okay. Thank you, Chris. Again, I normally don't have to deal with it when I'm doing most of what I'm doing, but in this case, yeah, I can see. Now, the tension wrinkles. That's a bit too big. They're basically going to zigzag between the legs. And most of the tension is coming from this leg. I'm going to zoom across. And then we're shrinking it a little bit. No. Nope. There we go. Now, unlike those other wrinkles up above, it's not going to have the cut in. Instead, I'm just going to use the slash, add in a slash along the bottom edge of each of these wrinkles. And then, yay, having to listen to all the details about the death of George Harrison because it's going on in the other room. I admit, I do not dislike George Harrison's music. I kind of think he was a little bit goofy in some ways, but his music was pretty darn good. But I don't want to listen to the full details of how he died of cancer. Now, the reason we're putting the sharp edge on the bottom of each of these wrinkles, we're going to go back in and polish some areas here. Right here. We're going to smooth it out. Actually, let's go ahead. Standard Z-sub. Very light. I'm going to shrink off the top of this particular wrinkle because it's getting too large. Shrink off the tops of some of these. The wrinkles don't need to be round, they need to be sharp. So, it's looking pretty good so far. And now let's go back to the slash so we can add some more of these sharp edges to the tension wrinkles. Oh. And there we go. Now let's go ahead, go back to our standard brush, which is still Unsub, and kind of smooth out the tops of some of these wrinkles. Because we want the bottom edge to be the key part of these wrinkles. Especially on here. Okay, and next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some tension wrinkles above the feet, although they're not going to be very large. In fact, it's probably going to be just one or two wrinkles. And we're going to make those add. We're going to shrink. We're just going to make them a bit stronger. We're just going to, still too big. Yeah. And then we're going to smooth these right here. And then we're going to go back to slash. And once again, enhance on the bottom of the wrinkle. None of that's strong enough. We got a smaller go. There we go. That's better. Oh, I just heard a really awesome Provax commercial, so. It's about the HPV vaccine. There we go. It's a wrinkle above that foot, and then we're going to do wrinkles above this foot. That sounds like the name of a really bad album, Wrinkles Above the Foot. What would you say to that as an album from your favorite band? Wrinkles Above the Foot. And then slash, and then sharpen these. Now, the reason we put the sharp edge on the bottom of the wrinkle is because it helps sell the idea of gravity. And the idea that these are not happening in a vacuum, but in a world where things fall to the ground the way everything else does in our world. You know, it helps sell that there's physical forces applying to this robe, this whatever other piece of clothing we're adding on. Frame. So we're adding the drapery. And again, right now, this would be a good place to stop. But we're ignoring the drapery and effects on the sleeves. Once again, we're going to hide the extras to make this a little bit easier to deal with. We're not going to bother with the chest parts. Because, well, no, we are. Because I was thinking for a second there that the chest wrinkles there would end up being hidden, for the most part, by the come on, by the amulet, but apparently not. So we're just going to add in a little bit of tension here. Not so much from the fact that there is tension there, but from the fact that there is commonly tension there, so it will develop those semi-permanent wrinkles that we were discussing earlier. It's going to be, they're going to be loose. And then we're going to make a little bit bigger couple of wrinkles coming down. Oh, too big. Smooths a little bit, helps get rid of some of the more artificial look to the wrinkles. And then we're going to be sharpening the edges of these wrinkles with that usual grab the bottom and give it a slash technique. And let's get that slash. go. There. Gives us a nice good wrinkling. The drapery is coming along nicely. It's a little exaggerated on the inside of the chest here, so we're going to smooth those out. There we go. That's something you can't really do with sculpting in marble, is smooth out wrinkles. You have to grind them out or chip them off. Okay. Well, we need to make some pretty hefty wrinkles here, some tension wrinkles here in the elbow. And we're going to smooth them out here. Now, break open slash, and let's give them again a bit of sharpening. Now, it's so much easier to paint cloth that has sharp wrinkles, because I said this earlier, it catches a dry brush so much easier. It catches, or it sinks out of a wash so much easier. And then and that's these wrinkles. And now we have a couple more tension wrinkles in the underarm. There we go. And now, last few slashes. We are almost done with our little Dragonborn Sorcerer. And let's zoom that in. And then in the front, we got a couple. And frame out. Make everything visible. And here we have our nicely detailed Dragonborn. What happens next, I can deal with without tablet. Alright. Now, let's go ahead and give both of them another layer of subdivision. Just to okay. Now, merge down. And that's the base miniature. The next thing we have to do, actually now that I look at it, the next thing we have to do is exaggerate the line of the mouth. And we're going to do that like this. We're just going to okay, there we go. Now, there's one problem. We have something missing. What do we have missing? We have the base that he's standing on missing. So we've got to append another subtool. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to import from my basic miniature shape the default base. Now you'll notice that this default base is a little high. It also needs to be subdivided a couple times to be nice and smooth. And again, let's see. We are going to I'm just going to use the deformation rather than the gizmo because my brain's just not ready to start messing with the gizmo. We're going to frame in on the thing, and all we're going to do is we're going to offset it on the Y. First 5 and there we go. And it's a little bit off center, just a little bit. So we're going to, let's see, Z or Y? We need X. Actually, it might be all. Just a couple more. Let's call it another 5. There. Frame. And all we have is taken off the base is a tiny little bit of his toe. So we can offset it by Z just 1 or 2. Frame. Yeah, there we go. All we have hanging off the base is a little bit of the toe. We frame the whole thing. Zoom out a little. Come up here to subtool, and we are going to merge down. And now we have one subtool, one piece that we need to make first we need to make it one single solid piece. To do this is simply geometry. We're going to dynamesh it, but at 1024 resolution. We want to make sure we don't lose any detail. And .097 polygon million vertexes. Okay, now we frame it out. It's now one single solid polygonal surface that's watertight. The problem is this won't print. Not because it's got too many problems, but because there's so many darn polygons, none of the slicers will be able to read it. I mean, 3.131 million polygons and 3.007 million vertexes. So what we're going to do is there's a nice little plugin called Decimation Master. And we're going to decimate to roughly 70,000 polygons. And this might take a bit. It's only at 4%. I also might sound like a robot. I might slow down. Heck, I might even stop broadcasting because I got an old computer, folks. But when it's done, I'll have a roughly 70,000 polygon, often with only a few, within just a couple polygons, model that the naked eye will not be able to see any detail difference between this and what I'm about to have. And this is over 3 million polygons. The percentage decrease is remarkable. And computing, please wait. It should be done any second. And there we go. We have 35,000 points and 70,041 polygons. And yet, if you look at it, yes, looking at it, you can kind of see on the broadcast there's a slight difference in the surface if you look very carefully. But for all intents and purposes, when you're looking at it at that size, or that size, really, you won't be able to see the difference. And looking at it like this will also give you a clue that that size of that cord and the belt, it really doesn't look as thick as it does on the full-scale miniature when it's like this. Meanwhile, we're going to save this. I'm going to save this under Broadcast Miniatures as Dragonborn Sorcerer. Dragonborn Sorcerer. That's all we do. And that is our figure. That is what we got, folks. It is a nice and solid sculpture that has become a nice and solid this will become a nice solid Dragonborn miniature for your D&D campaigns or whatever other campaigns you have where reptilian humanoids can cast spells. And we're going to go ahead and pop on back to the main window. Main camera, yay! Hi guys! It is now 9:59, so in just under 2 hours, I took a basic geometry figure, added in props and the little hip thing, and added a morph, and then proceeded to convert it completely into exactly what we randomly determined at the beginning of the show. That is what I do on this channel, is I make these miniatures the best that I can within a reasonable amount of time. Sad to say that right now it's pretty much, okay, there's a McFinn 3 that's not speaking, but hey, fine by me. So, now that we are done with the actual base figure, the next thing that will happen is I'm going to talk about what I have planned for upcoming shows. Sunday, as everyone knows, is Father's Day. My father is down in Atlanta. He's not here in Memphis. So what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to talk to him during the day, not during the show, and I might end up making a custom figure for him. The other thing is, last week, my hot end decided that it didn't want to be a hot end anymore. The heating block cracked. It cut a couple of the wires to the heating area and to the thermistor and spat out the nozzle in a blob of green filament that, as you will see here in a moment, actually kind of looked like a mirror image of Ireland. Yeah, let's see. Add source. Media file. Desktop. Where is that sucker? There it is. See, if I mirrored it, can I? No, it won't let me mirror it. No, it's a mirror image of Ireland. You can kind of see right where that's marking is that it kind of looks like that's where the nozzle is inside that mass of green filament. Anyway, on top of all this, when it cracked, it was printing, and it spewed molten filament throughout the interior of the assembly. Thankfully, tomorrow is payday. I can order a new assembly. And that includes the hot end, the PTFE tubing, the cabling, the wires that got torn, and even it comes with a new nozzle in place. Of course, we'll be taking it apart slightly and making sure everything's fitting properly before I put it on, but this means that until it gets here, I won't be printing anything. Yay. Meanwhile, it is 10:03. I am not tired, but I do have actual painting work to do. For those who don't know, earlier in the week, I did a couple broadcasts where I went from literally drawing a line in 3D Studio Max to this in the course of roughly 4.5 hours. Blah. That is roughly 60,000 polygons. I currently have it both mapped and chopped up for rigging. By chopped up, I mean it's got the different body parts as separate groupings within the OBJ. And I am going to... excuse me! I have to go ahead and rig it and texture it and create what's called a high-definition morph for it. It's a lot easier to texture with that high-definition morph present because you can use that to help add landmarks and shading detail edges. Anyway, that's what I have to do tonight. Oh. Sorry, McFinn, I did not notice you make that question. Most 3D printers that you can get will use either ABS or PLA. I don't mean that some use one and some use the other. I mean that most printers can use either filament. ABS is a little bit harder to print with. You have to have an enclosure, but the end result is more flexible and is more long-lasting. As a person who collects figures from Transformers, 90% of Transformers figures are made out of ABS plastic. 90% of the entire toy aisle in Walmart is made out of ABS plastic. PLA is the other kind, and it stands for polylactic acid. And what it is, ABS and polyurethanes and most other plastics are made from crude oil. Crude oil is the hundreds of millions of year old remnants of trees and other plants, not dinosaurs like we used to think. So what they did for PLA was they thought, what happens if we skip the billions of years bit? And so they just take and extrude it out. This is an almost empty spool of red. I don't use red for miniatures simply because this red is rather bright. You can't see detail very well. But the problem with PLA, oh yeah, I keep forgetting I've got the really good stuff. Most PLA, if you bent it double, it breaks. This I have to bend it back and forth to break it, but yeah. The problem is, Shinju, crazy kitty. Yes, you. Come on, onto your chair, onto your bed. Good girl. Wait, just not. You want the pettins? No, you don't. What are you doing, little fuzzbutt? What you doing? Giving me kitty kisses. That's what you doing. Yeah, sweetie. Anyway, I need a button I can push for feline interference. Flag on the play. Yes, I have very loving cats. And yes, they actually have a baby. Anyway, it's 10:06 now, or 10:08. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hold up my hand on this edge of the screen. And I'm going to count down from 5 to 1. When I see my hand get to the 1, on the third time, I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream. The reason for this is that takes care of, I might have some lag, and if I suddenly cut out and the lag hasn't caught up, I might stop the broadcast in the middle of talking to you. That wouldn't be cool. So here is my hand, and that's going to be 5, 4, 3, a 2, a 1, just like the commercial for the Tootsie Pop.